After sitting with plant medicines, we often think that we have done the hard part and the work is over. Well, what if I told you this is completely wrong? And actually, if plant medicines are taken the wrong way, they can actually do damage to us, not only to our mind, but to our body as well. I have been working with plant medicines for 7 years, and I'm going to give you 3 big tips to make sure plant medicines are more helpful to you than harmful. So, number one, and this is a big one, the experience doesn't start when you sit with the medicine and it doesn't end when you leave the ceremony space. And what I mean by this is a lot of people think the entirety of the work is I show up, I drink, and I leave. That's not at all the case. That's actually the worst mentality to have going into it. The process of sitting with plant medicine starts at least a few days before, and some people believe it starts a month before if you consider Dieta part of the process. So Dieta is supposed to be a 1 month buffer on either side of the plant medicine experience that prepares your mind and body to receive it. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of work, and that's primarily for ayahuasca. Others don't have that long of a buffer, but the idea is when you're sitting with these plant medicines and trying to integrate them, it is important that you recognize that it's not just the moment that you're sitting. That journey, that experience is only part of the process. The before and after matter exponentially more than the actual sitting itself. How are you preparing yourself? And how are you dealing with the information that you learned? Both of those are pivotal pieces to getting the most out of plant medicines in the most positive way. Number 2, and this is also a big one, when you're looking at integration or just your problems in general, look at them like a 360-degree problem. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say your problem is pushing a boulder, and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing. If you're doing it linearly, you're just going to keep pushing until you get the boulder where it needs to be. However, if you look at it at a 360-degree angle, you might realize, okay, I've been pushing it uphill, and downhill is also a valid direction. So if I just get out of the way of this rock and allow it to flow downhill, I will have to do far less work and it'll get done far faster. So when you're looking at your integration, try to look at what I can do to make this problem or this thing a part of my life better and tackle it directly. So just for an example, a lot of times when we sit with plant medicine, maybe one of the things that will come up or one of the problems we might face in our daily lives, whether we sat with plant medicine or not, is my room is messy and I want it cleaner. I feel better when it's clean, but sometimes sitting down and actually just cleaning the whole room feels like a lot for some people. Maybe it's overwhelming. Maybe we have mountains of clothes in every corner and there's no way I can get it done in this small period of time that I have. So how can you restructure this problem and make it an easier and more manageable idea? Maybe start by slowly over time getting rid of small parts and not adding. So for example, setting up a space that will remain clean and slowly growing that space throughout your room. For example, for me, what you see behind me is my altar. This is my main part that is always clean, and I start here, make sure this is clean, and move off of it. Sometimes we're going to mess up, but choosing that specific part. Or sometimes you just need a little bit of help. Sometimes getting some help from someone else can be a valid option. Maybe sometimes your own world seems too big to change all at once. For example, your room. So maybe you can clean the outside world a little bit by picking up a piece of trash here and there, slowly get yourself into position to take on a bigger challenge, which is the room itself. Third point here, healing isn't linear. It's more of a loop-de-loop and pull. So when you're sitting with plant medicines, integrating from them, or just general problems in your life, the healing is never going to be linear. You're going to be working on something, it's slowly going to get better, and maybe all of a sudden you make a breakthrough and it gets way better. Or you're working on something, you have a breakthrough, and then a few years later it doesn't fully connect and it falls back through. And then now you're dealing with things that you thought you dealt with in the past. I'm sure we've all experienced this at one time or another. I know I have, where I've been working through a difficult situation, I thought I dealt with it, and then it comes back to haunt me. It happens to all of us, but you can't think of healing as linear Because if you think of healing as linear, it's going to look like every time that happens, you're going backwards. That's not the case. What has really happened is that loop-de-loop and pull, you've had an opportunity to see your problem from a different perspective. Or maybe that solution that you previously tied to that problem fell through and it didn't work anymore. So now you're going to have to find a better one, a more mature one that your brain has had more time to develop and really think upon. So whenever you're looking at healing, please don't think of it as linear. Sometimes it gets a little worse, sometimes it gets a little better, and then worse and then better again, and sometimes it gets better right off the bat. You never know how healing's going to take, but one thing that I really like to attribute it to is when you are healing from a burn in a hospital. Let's say you got 3rd degree, 2nd degree burns. What they do is they don't just let the burn heal. They let it heal a little bit, and then they come in with sponges and they scrub it back down, and then they let it heal a little bit more, and then they scrub it back down. It gets worse and then better, and then worse and then better, until the body has healed up enough internally to create the best possible healing scenario. Now, I can't go into the details of that, and I really don't think you want to, but essentially, even in the hospital with the physical body, healing is not linear. You broke your arm, okay, let's let it heal back up, then let's put pins in it and let's let it heal the rest of the way. It's not linear. It's a loop-de-loop and pull. At this point, I feel you are owed a story on how I got to this point. Well, when I started out in college, I wanted to be pre-medical, but I quickly figured out that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I started studying psychology and forensic psychology and abnormal psychology and really any psychology I could get my hands on. I'm a bookworm like that. Well, I'm dyslexic, so I'm not necessarily a bookworm, but an information worm, I guess. I just gather it and gather it and gather it. So I was really interested in it. And I was also at the same time managing an ayahuasca church to varying levels throughout my college experience and high school experience. However, through that, I spent a lot of time around these plant medicines. I watched people start working through their processes, and I started attaching some cognitive behavioral therapy things that I've learned from school, and maybe it would be better if they did it this way. And I started attaching other things that I was watching from other people working through experiences. And next thing I knew, I was leading group integration / group therapy sessions for 40 people. Now, they knew I wasn't qualified to do so because I was like 19, but I was starting to lead people through these experiences in groups, and then solo one-on-one. I was getting paid to take people privately and help them work through these integrative experiences. I've put a lot of work and a lot of effort into learning this stuff. And if you were to put in the effort as well, I think it could be helpful. I'm going to do this. So that's where I learned all of this, and that's how I've learned to give this information. I feel like if you take these 3 steps into account, whether it's with plant medicines or just in a general sense, it will help you with a lot of things. If you want more tips on how to get through the day or how to integrate plant medicines, go ahead and subscribe and drop a comment below with whatever you're going through, because if I can help, I will. That's really one of the things I love to do. So subscribe, comment down below anything that you would want potentially help with, and as always, I will see you next time.